Welcome back to Money Media. My name's James and today we are going to discuss the differences between investing and gambling. So as an economist, I'm sure you can appreciate that in my day-to-day dealings, whether it be consulting for business, whether it be talking with colleagues, friends or family, or whether just being on social media and participating in discussions there, one of the common points that is raised or questions that is raised is about how gambling differs from investing, and especially in Australia where we have really high rates of gambling comparative to the rest of the world. And so it's a super common question. If you're watching this now and you are a gambler, whether it be sports or what have you, you may actually be asking yourself the same question. And there are a few minor differences between investing and gambling, but there is one really major differential, and that is arbitrage. Is essentially probability. It's the likelihood that you will see your money returned to you with interest. So if you're to look at my track record with investment, for example, it speaks for itself. Whereas if you are looking at my track record in gambling, particularly sports, which is very slim, there's not many bets I've placed over the years, but you would soon find that that track record is not very impressive. And so today I wanted to cover where the two differ and why. And I want to give you a really good example of where and how they differ. So when we're talking about mathematical probability, what I'm referring to is the likelihood that if you put your money into something, that you will see that money again return. Let's use the gambling, for example. So let's say you put money on a rugby league team to win a game. Now, the odds are reflective of the likelihood that that team will either win or lose. The football team that you choose has a low margin, a low likelihood to win that game, then the odds are obviously higher. The bookmaker has mathematically set the odds up so that no matter who wins, they will be in front. So even if let's say you put a multi-leg on a particular rugby league game with 3 legs and all those 3 legs come up and then you win, well, the bookmaker doesn't lose because what they've used is arbitrage. They've used mathematical equations to ensure that even though some people will win their bets, the majority will lose. And so no matter who wins or loses, the bookmaker still wins. So he's arbitraged his bets. And I want to give you a real world example of how you can use arbitrage, and if you understand arbitrage, how sometimes opportunities prop up in day-to-day life and you can use those to your advantage. So this is a true story. The mate of mine who was involved will probably be watching this video, but some years ago, and if you're familiar with rugby league, you'll know the Penrith Panthers and how they've had a really significant winning streak of grand finals recently. And so we're going back just before that. It was the year 2020, and Penrith Panthers played Melbourne Storm in the grand final. And I had a conversation with a friend, and I think it was during the semi-finals, so those two teams weren't even confirmed to play one another in the grand final. But it was looking like they were. They were both the dominant teams, and so I considered Melbourne Storm a pretty safe bet. So when I spoke to this friend, he disagreed with me and he thought Penrith Panthers were the safest bet. And so we each put up $100, I think it was, $200, whatever it might have been, and I picked for our team to win. And so after I placed that bet with him, I went to the bookmaker and I looked at the odds. And so the odds for Penrith to win were lower odds than the Storm. And so because our bet, we each put up the same amount of money, there was actual opportunity for arbitrage in that bet. So what I did was I took an amount of money that was just less than the amount of money I placed on the bet with my friend. I took an amount just less than that and I put it on a bet to back Penrith Panthers to win the grand final, ensuring that I would have won enough that had they won, and I would have lost my bet with my friend, I would have enough to cover that bet and still retain some. And so what happened ultimately was, if you're not a rugby league supporter, Melbourne Storm did win the grand final. It was actually quite close. I think it was 6 points between them. But it didn't matter to me, because no matter what, I was going to win that outcome. I'd arbitraged or hedged my risk in that bet. And so no matter whether Storm won or Penrith won, I was still going to be up no matter what. And so that's an example of one single arbitrage moment. But if you are a bookmaker, you've got tens, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of those types of wagers set up. So no matter who wins and who loses, the bookmaker always wins. And that's their business model. Their business model is for profit. They're not a charitable organization, which underlines the greatest example in this lesson, is that while you may be gambling with your money with a bookmaker, that bookmaker is not gambling with you. What they are doing is investing in their business to set up mathematical likelihoods or probability that no matter who wins and who loses, they will win. And that's how they implement arbitrage into their business model for their investment. And so when somebody asks you next time what's the difference between gambling and investing, you can reply that the difference between the two predominantly is the likelihood that money will be returned with interest. So it's a mathematical probability or likelihood that that money will be returned. So essentially the odds are in the favor of the investor, whereas the odds are against the gambler. And I hope that makes sense to you. For any more questions, or if you've got any points on that, please feel free to reach out in the comments, and I'll see you on the next video.